What is happening, everybody? Thank you for joining us here again for the Pavement Group podcast. This is episode 16, a very special one. I know I say that every week, but this is really, really special. One of my favorite people on earth is joining us, Jen DiMartino from ALS One. We're going to talk about how she's built this incredible organization that Brian and I care a whole lot about, and I want to share with you guys and some marketing tips and some branding expertise. It's going to be a lot of fun. As always, Brian's here with me. What's happening, pal?
What's happening, man? Good to be here.
Great to be here. It's great to be here. This is going to be a lot of fun. Thanks for joining us. Episode 16 of the Pavement Group podcast. Let's go. All right. Welcome back, everybody. Thank you again for joining us. This week is Jen DiMartino. We've been trying to put this together for a long time. So Jen's the executive director of ALS One, and ALS One is it's an incredible organization that was started by a mutual friend of ours. We had Mark Sullivan on a few weeks ago from Salesforce, who's the chairman of ALS One. We talked a little bit about it, and we've been trying to get Jen on here because it's just such an incredible organization. But it's like the most impressive startup I've ever seen. It just started a few years ago. And the way that she has branded it and marketed it is so impressive and has been such a cool story that we wanted to share with everybody. So welcome aboard, Jen. How are you?
I'm doing great. I can't thank you enough for having me on. This is quite an honor. I have to say it's the first time on a podcast, so I'm excited. I know no one's asked.
You're everywhere. You've never been on a podcast. That's fascinating to me.
Yeah.
Well, after people hear this, it probably won't be the last. That's for sure.
Definitely not. We were talking a little bit before the show, and I'm like, let's save some of this. There's a lot of great stuff to get into. So, Brian, welcome back. Good to see you, my man.
Thanks, brother. Looking forward to this conversation and looking forward to introducing people to ALS One and to Jen.
Yeah, no, for sure. So again, with this show, we've gone down different avenues. We had a couple of guys on talking about green and environmental, and we had Mark on talking about Salesforce a few weeks ago, and we started talking about ALS One. So we're not really just a paving podcast or a property management podcast or whatever. We like the audience we reach, like to share a lot of different unique approaches to business and life itself. And so ALS One is just, to me, again, it's a fascinating sort of organization to look at. So Kevin Gosnell, who was someone I was in business with for a long time, a very close friend. Jen went to, and I'm going to let you tell most of the story, but I'm just setting it up. Jen went to college with Kevin, and he was diagnosed with ALS in 2015, started this organization, which was originally the ALS Knights. 2016 started ALS One, and it's really turned into an incredible group that's helped a lot of people. Really has brought some of the greatest minds in the healthcare world together to really forward their mission. And Jen has been the cornerstone of it. Like when I tell you, it's just, I mean, if this was a public, a regular business and not a nonprofit, it would be on Wall Street already. Like, it's incredible what you've done. So will you share a little bit about how you got involved with ALS One and sort of what the mission is?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. I have to be honest. I didn't see this coming. This was a sort of one of those crossroads that you find yourself in, and you're not sure what got you to that point, to that fork. But it was, kind of a no-brainer. So I had been at a company that I loved. I was in marketing for my whole career. I was at an agency for years, and then I was working for a business that was a global brand, and I was in marketing and design. And I had been there for about 9.5 years. And we found out that Todd, as you mentioned, our mutual friend, Kevin Gosnell, who I had the great pleasure of getting to know in college. We went to college together, so I met him in the early 90s. And Kevin was just, I'll just kind of skip back to college because I think it's important. Kevin was the type of person, Todd, as you know, he was just special from day
Mhm.
one. If you had the opportunity to get 5 minutes with him, you were so lucky, and you left feeling better about yourself, your outlook in life. He was, I get a little emotional, so if my voice cracks a little bit, but he he was one of those guys that would mentor anyone around him, no matter what age. So in college, he was mentoring his own friends, his own peers who were the same age. These are kids that
Sure.
were venturing out in life, starting something so scary and so new, leaving their house and going to college. And he was the guy. He was the not only the captain, one of the captains of the football team, but he was the guy that you went to if you had a problem in a relationship, if it was work related, if it was, school. He always wanted to know how you were, how he could help. Maybe he had a book for you that you could read. I remember going to his house after college and seeing these
Yeah.
bookcases and
I got a
just
bunch
like,
of them right behind me still.
yeah.
Yes,
And
for
and
sure.
he I've read every single one. Here's and you go over here. Here's one. This will
Right,
read
right, right.
this is exactly what you need. And he was just that guy. He started, as you know, he started a paving company, seal coat in high school to pay for college, help his family pay for college. When he got out of college, he said, "You know what? Um, I'm going to further that and see what I can do with it." And he built it into an enormous conglomerate. And not only for himself, but he also mentored people along the way, other companies who, were like companies, but maybe were having hardships. And he would go out and meet with them. And, these were people who were, as you know, again, competitors of his who he
Sure.
would help and mentor and help to turn things around for him. So
Yeah.
he was just that kind of guy. At the time through all this, my husband and we met in college, and my husband was on the football team with Kev, um, and I was working in a company that I loved. I was there for 9.5 years, and we got a call one day. I'll never forget. My husband called, and he said Kevin was just diagnosed with ALS, and it's just one of those things. You remember where you were at the time, what you were doing, and the first words were, "Okay, what do we do? What do we do? Well, he's starting an organization. He's trying to unify leaders in ALS research and care right here in Massachusetts, and we kind of heard the rumblings of this. And back then, you graduate, you're friends with people, but kids get, everyone's got kids, everyone has lives. You don't see each other as
Sure.
often as you'd like to.
Yeah,
You can
life gets busy.
exactly. And so, we heard about what he was trying to put together, and he said, I just want everybody to have a fundraiser because I want to really kickstart this as best possible.
Sure.
The funding was not for him. Luckily, he didn't need that type of funding for his own care. What he primarily wanted to do was just help get this organization off the ground. And so the nights, when you had mentioned the ALS nights, the nights were like the fundraising arm of ALS One. So ALS One was the doctors and the care providers working together, and then the nights were the kind of ambassadors and the people out there, fundraising for that.
Yeah.
So
The ground troops.
the Jimmy Fund for Dana Farber and that sort of thing. So we said, okay, well, all right, we're in. We will have a Christmas party. We will have a fundraiser at the holidays. So we just, again, was working full time and just put everything into it. I had done some fundraising in the past, nothing at all, on a very high level, but I've, was involved with Little League fundraising, American Cancer Society, American Heart Association, things like that. But so when this kind of evolved, we said, okay, we're just going to do everything we can. So we put together a big party, and we ended up raising about $43,000, which was, I'd never, we had no idea how it was going to turn out. And it was an incredible
Well, it was it
experience.
was spectacular. I remember that party at the Garibaldi Club, and it was no, it really was though. Like it was just such a
Garibaldi.
special. It was such a special night, and just the set like the timeline here. So this was 2015 in the fall, and that's
Yeah.
when Kevin had gotten diagnosed in May.
Yep.
By October, he had decided he wanted to put this put the organization together, and then I think there was a 5K. Then we had the evening for the nights, and then
Yep.
your event, which really catapulted everything. It got so many people involved, and it was so well done. So that was just
Thank you.
right at the inception.
Yeah, it was really exciting, and it was exciting for me because I thought, wow, this is really bigger, something bigger than me, something bigger than what we'd ever done in terms of fundraising before. And I was able to sort of make it, Bob and I, my husband and I, we tag teamed it, and it was something that we could just do the way we wanted to do. We weren't structured by, an overarching thing. We could just go at it the way we wanted to, and
Sure.
just tried to put as much heart into it as we could, and it did really well. And so that was sort of it. That was okay. This is this was our contribution, and we're happy.
So you thought.
We were happy to do it. Yeah, we were happy to do it. And I think it was a couple weeks later, I had some contacts at Mass Challenge, which is a phenomenal startup organization in Boston that helps startups get on their feet. Okay. And I knew the founder, so I said, Kevin, I think you'd love to meet him. He's a wonderful guy, and he just happened to have been the son of my cardiologist, and he was like, wow, that's great. I'd love to meet him. So Bob and I and Kevin's wife Kathy and I and Kevin took them into Boston that day. We had a great meeting with the folks from Mass Challenge, and just kind of picked their ear a little bit. And I thought, okay, this was great. This was wonderful to be able to introduce him to them. Sure. And we're on our way home, and Kevin said, wondering if you could just come in for a few minutes when we get back. Sure, absolutely. So we went over, and we were sitting at the kitchen table, and Kev was in a wheelchair at this point. And this was probably early December of 2015.
Okay.
And, we're sitting there, and he said, I need to ask you a question. So, okay, what's going on? And he said, my disease is progressing quicker than we had all hoped. We're set to launch ALS-1 officially in a month at the end of January 21st, 2016. And I need someone to take this over and really build it and run with it. And I can't do it anymore. I'm progressing. And I would love that person to be you. And I was wondering if you would consider leaving your job to do this. And I know it's a big ask, but yeah. And I just, and there were tears, and my first thing out of my mouth was, for why me? I don't know why you would, I didn't have that fundraising experience. And so he said, I'm not, Kevin, and he said, I'm not looking for something on paper. I'm not looking for, the perfect resume. I'm looking for the perfect person. And I know, I know you, I know how you are. I know the heart that you put into it. I saw what you just did at the fundraiser, and that's the approach that I want to be taken with ALS-1. And it's really overwhelming because I think that, the fact that he saw something in me that I didn't even know, I guess it was there. Sure. And so we got in the car, and he said, I don't expect an answer right now, but I do need, I do need to know quickly because things are happening quick. Mm-hmm. And there was a lot involved because it just, there was our family insurance was through the company that I worked for. My husband's in real estate full time. So, everything was through me. So this was
sure.
kind of a big deal. So we got in the car and Bob said, "What do you think?" And I said, I don't know much about this disease, but I don't even know if he's serious. I don't know. I mean, that's, we'll see if he follows up, but maybe he's just being nice because we just had this fundraiser for him. I didn't know, and he said, "But what are you thinking?" And I said, "Well, that's a big deal. This is a big deal." And I said, "What do you think?"
Change,
"No, I want to know what you think." And I said, "Well, I think things fall in front of you at certain times in your life and you need to make a decision. And I think the obvious decision is, how do you say no to that? And how could you not help? Someone is asking you something of that nature and that magnitude to help a disease that literally has nothing. I think is a no-brainer." And he said, "That's what I was hoping you'd say." So we called him when I got home, and I went in the next day and I gave my notice, and that was it. And I kind of just learned as I went.
Sure.
Yeah.
So you entered into this, and you followed your heart. You knew this is what you needed to do.
Yeah.
You wanted to help a friend, but you also knew the opportunity that was in front of you to really make a difference, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I know the answer to that, but so you had a marketing background, you had a branding background. Is that what you relied on first to get this going? Like, what was your first instinct on day one on the job? Because this was, again, brand new. We were all trying to kind of fake our way through it to some degree and figure it out and learn on the fly.
Right.
What was your first go-to? Like, what part of your experience did you rely on first?
I think what I went to first, honestly, I had been, a patient at a couple times in my own life.
Okay.
And so I think that there is the marketing, how are you going to approach this? All of that, but it goes back to something that Kevin had always said, and if you watch his videos, you remember, he'll say, "What if this was you?" And I think that that's really the key thing. What if this was you? How would you want to approach this? How would you want others to approach this? ALS is a terrifying disease. It's and I didn't know much about it. I did the Ice Bucket Challenge. Who didn't? A year prior, I when we were forming the fundraiser, did a lot of research. I remember my husband saying to me at one point, "Wow, you even know how to pronounce amyotrophic lateral sclerosis. I've never even heard that." I said, "Yeah,
That would take me 6 months of practice.
Research,
That's impressive.
But I think it's really, I mean, you can marketing is marketing. Products are part of it. How you could take, a can of Coke or an apparel line or whatever, and you're going to want to market it to your audience and to the right people and in the best way possible. But when you're in a nonprofit space, it's such a niche audience, because and especially in such a rare disease space, because not everybody's been affected by it or impacted by it. A lot of people don't even know about it.
Right.
Surprisingly enough, even with the Ice Bucket Challenge, there's still a tremendous amount of people out there that really don't know what ALS is.
Sure.
And so you can do your best at marketing, but you really have to understand the people behind the disease. And I think that's the difference in terms of, marketing a product and then being in the nonprofit segment and trying to help other people understand what you're trying to do. I recently had someone say to me, "How do you get so many people to fundraise for you? How do you get so many people to join your Falmouth Road Race team?" We're 140 of us this year. And it's continuing to tell the story, but it's also because there are that many people that were impacted by the disease, and it's getting to know those people and hearing their stories and understanding that that's why you're doing this.
Sure.
I would guess that it's a pretty sensitive thing to, from a marketing and storytelling standpoint, because, people that are going through this, the best way to tell the story is from a person who is actually, going through this disease. And that's a very sensitive thing, right? To number one, properly tell the story, and to, be in that space where you're capturing someone's journey through this disease. Yeah. In order to ultimately, and I've watched all of the videos of Kevin, and what courage it takes to be able to be on camera and tell that story when you're in the middle of that journey yourself, yeah. and that is, but what an impactful way to pay it forward, and that's the thing that always stood out to me was like, what it says about a person like Kevin, that the number one thing that, he was worried about outside of his family, of course, was like, how do I leave an impact? How do I leave a legacy that will live on forever as a result of, him having the courage to stand up and do something about it in the midst of his own, challenges himself.
Well, you're exactly right. So when he was diagnosed at age 46, he looked at this the same way as he did everything in his life. From a business standpoint, he looked at it like a business. What's wrong with this disease that has been around for over 80 years that has nothing? It has no treatments, there's 2 drugs on the market that will, potentially lengthen your life by a couple of months. Those are not viable, treatments that patients and families are looking for. But to be diagnosed with a terminal disease that has such a potential for a rapid and terrifying progression like Kevin's. Kevin lost his battle in 14 months after his diagnosis. But to take that diagnosis and turn it into a positive for all other people in your path, and not look at it and say, okay, what am I going to do with the rest of my remaining time? Let's fill our calendars with all these things on my bucket list that I would love to do and that my family would love to do. And although I'm sure he wanted very much to do that and make these precious memories with his family, they made a very, very big decision to make other people on the same journey, hopefully, have time to make more precious moments themselves. So he took something life-changing and devastating, and he flipped it around and did something so selfless by uniting these world leaders to work together to create unity in a space that there was a lot of duplicity and silos going on. And he knew it wasn't going to benefit him. He knew that from day one. And that was A-okay with him. He wasn't doing it for himself. He was doing it for everybody else. And that was just one of the many things that made him so special. And that was really his legacy that I'm just trying to continue to carry on. I'm the lucky one who, got to be in this position and to every day wake up and say, okay, what would Kevin do? I talk to him all the time. And to be able to hopefully make him proud. We're going on 6 years in January, and we've raised well over $10 million. Over half of that now is from just grassroots fundraising, things from, as small as lemonade stands and car washes, and as large as, galas and golf tournaments. And we just had someone who just returned home from a cross-country bike ride that just phenomenally,
yeah. Michael raised over 100,000, right?
113,000 he's at now.
113,000. He rode from Oregon back to Marshfield, Mass, and it was probably 2 months, right? He was on the road for like 8 weeks, something like that.
2.5 months, 78 days.
Incredible.
Never slept in a hotel. And one of the most he's just such a kind and magnetic and just a wonderful storyteller. And he could have just gotten on his bike and just rode, and we didn't hear from him again for 2.5 months. But he spent the
Yeah.
time every single night to chronicle his journey and the people that he met and the stories that he told and folks that had been impacted by ALS along the way. I mean, it's absolutely incredible what he's done. And I'm just so glad he's home safely. And
Yeah. No, that was awesome. There was a book there in that 2.5 months. The stories he had every night. He was posting
exactly.
on
That's what
Facebook.
I told him. I said, "This is
So neat.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
No, that's an incredible guy.
I think it's so important, in today's world where sometimes the things that we hear every day are not always the best, right? That Todd shared something last night on Facebook that I reshared, and it was like, just seeing the good in people. And I think, when you look at this type of scenario, the nonprofit space, like you really do get to see the very best in people, the people who are willing to give up their jobs to go, fight for a cause, and, people who are willing to sacrifice their time to create space for people to raise money, and then people donating money or donating their time or donating whatever it is. And, I think it's so important to have those lights in the world today where, sometimes things seem so shaky, but there's way more people out there that are doing incredible things in the world than there ever is bad news, and
you're right. You're so right. It's so true. And yet it's frustrating that those stories aren't being told. And this, one of the reasons I'm so grateful for you to be here, is because it's very hard to get those stories told on a larger scale. And unfortunately, and nothing against the news, but everybody just wants to focus on the the bad news many times.
Yeah.
But there is so much good out there.
So much good. You got to work a little harder to find it, but it's worth it.
Yeah.
It's definitely worth it.
Yeah.
So, you mentioned that Kevin approached ALS Nights and ALS One like a business, like he attacked everything else, and he leveraged his network, and he figured out the best way to do it, the most efficient way to do things, and to make it as big as possible, as quick as possible, because he knew he could help as many people that way. So I'm going to go back. I'd asked you kind of the question about your experience that you had in the past. You were with a large company doing marketing and doing branding. And so the biggest challenge I saw when this was all coming together was you had some really smart, really talented, amazing people, but maybe had different philosophies about how to do this when you're bringing together. So ALS One brings together some of the best doctors, researchers in the world, ALS TDI, which is a nonprofit pharma company that's working on just it's ALS therapy development. Is that what it is? What's
Yes,
the TDI?
ALS Therapy Development Institute. They're
Therapy Development Institute. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes, and then CCLS, which is helps with care and guiding families through this.
Yep. They're tremendous. So the CCALS, Compassionate Care ALS, they're located in Falmouth, Massachusetts on Cape Cod, but their reach is really nationwide. They help patients obviously right here in New England, but they were able to expand into the New York, New Jersey area about 1.5 years ago. And they also do help patients, far and wide. And we definitely do the best we can if we were referring someone to Ron and his team down there to help as many as we can. You will never hear anyone saying, "I'm sorry, we don't go to that state," or we can't help.
Yeah.
We're always going to try to help. The other partners in the organization is Merit Sokovich, who's the chief of neurology and the director of the Healy Center for ALS at Mass General, and her team with James Barry, Dr. James Barry, and then Dr. Robert Brown, Dr. Bob Brown at UMass Medical, who's just, they are just not only leaders here in Massachusetts, but they are the go-to doctors and neurologists and researchers from all across the world. People come from everywhere and want to be seen by them and want to get their input. And they're on the cutting, edge of research. And now they're collaborating and working together. So before, they were all in the Massachusetts space, and but they weren't communicating as effectively and sharing ideas. And if you're not sharing ideas, you're often, spinning your wheels, because you might be doing the same research as the other person and you're not even talking about it. And so
Sure.
you're not sharing the successes, but you're not sharing failures either. So
Well, I remember early on here, and I think Kevin had told me Merritt was spending like 60% of her time writing grants, trying to get money to do. And I say this all the time, but might be the smartest person on the planet.
I know.
She's brilliant, and this is what she was
Brilliant.
doing with
Not
her
only is she
time.
brilliant, but she's one of the kindest people
Oh,
that you'll
amazing.
ever. It's remarkable. Not to get off topic, but these folks, they have dedicated their lives knowingly to a disease that is as tricky as this one, knowing how difficult it is. They could have gotten into many other disease spaces, knowing that, the reward of being, coming up with, real viable treatments was much easier in different spaces.
Sure.
That they chose ALS, and that alone really tells you something about these folks. And that, again, they are just incredible people, every single one of them.
Yeah.
And
no, they really are.
Yeah, and so now they're, the communication lines are open and flowing. They have meetings all the time. They're sharing data and ideas. We're having a research symposium, our annual research symposium, coming up at the end of November. Last year at it, we had over 400 people from 12 countries, all sharing clinical data with each other, which is just phenomenal.
So you're very active on social media. You have a great website, and when you're designing all that stuff, do you have to take into account all of these different organizations and make sure? Because ALS One means one team working together, but you got people coming from all different parts of this industry.
Right. I try to obviously do my best to showcase them and what they mean to ALS One as partners. Each one is its own unit, entity as well. So they're all fundraising. CCALS does their own fundraising. UMass, MGH, ALS TDI. What they fundraise does not go back into ALS One. What we fund is all of them. So we raise funds and we support their research and care. So it's an interesting dynamic, because they are obviously all, they're not all leaving their institutions to be only part of ALS One, but it's an organization of those.
Sure. Okay. So from sort of a digital or technology standpoint, how do you see the nonprofit space evolving in the upcoming years? What do you see that's going to be different? What do you have to be ready for?
It's interesting. I think if anything else, if nothing else we've learned in the past 18 months is that these things are going to constantly change, and we just have to, keep our feet as firmly on the ground, because we know a wave is going to come at any time and just try to knock us over.
How did you? So 2020 was the biggest fundraising year in the history of the organization, right?
Yes. Yeah.
And that, fraught with challenges a little bit. Yeah, I would say.
I think you do that? There's only 2 people in the organization. So I was, able to hire someone a year and a half ago, which she came on right before, just about 3 months before the pandemic hit. So everything just pivoted virtual, including our gala. Obviously, there were some things we couldn't have that just didn't make sense virtually, but we did. I think a lot of people knew that it was a very, it was a dark time. It was a dark time for everybody. And we have such amazing supporters. That's the thing. People just, there's just so many people that are so kind, so generous. And I think they knew as the space we were in. And, but we did phenomenally with the virtual events that we had, and we really had a tremendous year. We raised more than we ever had in the past, and that trend is continuing. We just started our new fiscal year at the beginning of July, and already seeing that trend again happening for this year, which is just
that's awesome,
incredible. Yeah.
That's
But
wild.
I think, it's interesting because the digital space is just expanding so rapidly that it's very hard to, keep up with all of the different platforms that there are.
Okay.
Every day I feel like there's something new. Every day I'm getting a call or an email from a new company that's entered the space. Yes, but we have this and we have these bells and whistles and we can do this and we can do that. And it's trying to figure out what's right for you.
Sure.
And so, because you don't want to say no too quickly because they might have things that are actually,
Oh yeah.
to benefit you. But yeah, it's doing your research, trying to figure out, what the newest things are. And but it's tough because it's constantly evolving.
Yeah. No, I bet it is. Brian, do you have any more questions for Jen before we wrap up here?
No, I will add to the digital conversation though. One of the things that we have learned, I'm a partner in a digital marketing agency, and one of the things that we've learned is how to think digital. And if I could give any of the listeners out there or ALS One, you guys, when you're looking at digital things, it's like, we are also used to existing in this digital space that we are so quick to click off of something when it doesn't tell us what to do. Right. So like, sometimes this is great advice that I've learned the hard way is like, the new fancy thing that we tend to chase sometimes is sometimes not the best, right? It's sometimes the most simple things that keep people knowing what to do, and I always use the analogy of like, if you go to shop on Amazon, they make it really easy for you to spend money, right?
Sure.
And, from the standpoint of digital evolution, my advice to everybody would be keep it simple, like look for the next thing that could potentially, pivot you to the next level, but also make sure that it's simple enough that people know, when they go to your website, Jen, they should know exactly where to donate and how to sign up for recurring donations and things like that, right? Those are, what are the most important things and making sure that those things are front and center. So, and happy to help with any of that or guide you through any of those questions when people are.
Yeah, I think we as a society, you're right, and I think we as a society are we're headline readers.
Yes,
we don't want to spend the time to read the story, and if you can't wrap it up in that one headline, you're going to miss out. So I unfortunately try to be as big of a storyteller as I can because each thing that we do has a backstory. So it is sometimes very hard to wrap things up in a nice little, with a nice little bow because you want to tell the story. You want to, whether it's a person, why they're fundraising for us or, someone that they've lost. Sometimes it's very hard to do that.
Sure.
But you're right. Yeah. Everything needs to be very succinct.
Yeah, when it comes to social media, 3 seconds and 10 seconds of a video view to Facebook and Instagram is a real big deal. Like if you pay attention to something for 3 seconds, you are qualified to look at that item. And then 10 seconds, it's like, man, you're really interested. And so when you think about that, it's pretty crazy to think if you can pack a impactful message in the first 10 seconds of a video, it can make all the difference for your company, right? And that is very hard to do. Like when you actually think about what you can get out in 10 seconds, seems impossible to get something out that's impactful, but it is possible. It's just very difficult.
What is it with a website, Brian? Like 3 clicks or something, and you either lose a customer or they engage? Is it 3 clicks?
Yeah, I mean, you want people to be able to take action from, right where they're looking. So they call it above the fold, right? Like, when you go to a website, you need the call to action for what people are generally coming to your site for or what you want them to do front and center, because otherwise, you can have the best branding and marketing and it can look great, but if people don't know what to do, to your point, they just click off and go somewhere else, and those conversions, when you start studying the analytics of that stuff, and you have a lot of traffic and you have a lot of attention, being able to convert that at higher percentages. And then what does that look like, in fundraising or revenue for a business, makes a huge difference.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Oh, that's wild. All right. Well, I thought I started this podcast thinking that we were going to talk a little bit more about branding and about marketing and stuff. And we talked about so many better things, I think. Really, my takeaway is that if you get passion, you get purpose, you can do anything. And you certainly have. I'm going to move my fat head here so you can see als1.org behind me here. That's the website if you want to go. Anybody that's watching this and go learn a little more about the organization, of course, make a donation if you can. It's an incredible organization, and the work you guys are doing is it's so impressive, but it's so necessary and so important. So, Jen, I can't thank you enough for coming on.
Oh, I can't thank you enough for having me. This was wonderful. And we have a lot of things going on. We have a lot of great events coming up, whether you're a researcher, whether you've been impacted by the disease, whether you just want to learn more about it or how to get involved. als1.org. You can, donate or just learn how to get involved. And always here.
Awesome. You're the best. Brian?
Thank you both.
Very well.
Our pleasure. Brian, thank you for the tips as well. That was good stuff.
Yeah.
Great to see you again. Good. And hopefully everybody will join us for episode 17, which we'll be putting out here next week. But thank you for joining us with Jen DiMartino from ALS1, Brian, myself. Thank you so much. Episode 16 of the Pavement Group podcast. Take care.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.